everyone. Hope you find yourself having a great day. We're going to do the minigun tutorial. My anticipation is that it's going to probably run about 2 hours. Now, I'm going to break this video down into multiple segments, probably 20 minutes, 30-minute segments. And my assumption is that if you've got any experience at all with Cinema 4D, you will be able to complete this very likely in real time as you watch. I'm going to take my time, explain everything, and you'll find that the majority of what's involved is repetition. Once you've mastered just a few things, and not many intricate moves here, just some very basic things, you'll be able to model this blindfolded. And I'm going to be using Cinema 4D R13, and I'm going to be using Photoshop also. If you look, you'll see that there's some LED panels, or what would appear to be LED panels, on this minigun, and a few little buttons and switches and things of that nature. I'm going to be using Photoshop to create those. I'm going to provide those in the description beneath this video so you can download them if you don't have access to Photoshop. My assumption is if you shop where I do online, Photoshop comes at a very affordable price. And we're going to use a few different things. We're going to do some inner extrudes, some extrudes. We're going to use a cloner to create the barrels. We're going to sweep some faces, make some editable surfaces, involve some keyframe animation for our barrel spinning, provide a little detail on the accessories of the minigun, apply nuts and bolts and things of that nature, and some basic texture. We're not going to get fancy with textures. That's a very subjective issue, and people people have a wide variety of taste when it comes to texturing. The texturing itself is somewhat of an art, so you can get all kind of crazy with your textures. But what we're going to do here, just outside of using any of the bitmaps or JPEGs that we use involving LED screens, are going to be just default materials in Cinema 4D. So sit back, get yourself something to drink. Like I said, I'm going to try to break these down into 20 or 30-minute segments, and my assumption is it's going to take about 2 hours to complete this. So let's get ready. Alrighty, so let's fire up Cinema 4D. And first thing we're going to do is go into our render settings. And I'm going to render this at HD 720, so 1280 by 720. I rendered 1280 by 720 because most of my stuff I can play on my TV in its full HD. I've got a digital media player, and I can play this stuff in HD on TV, not some upscale or Xbox or Game Boy, whatever, you know. I'm actually playing it in its full intended version at its native frame rate. So I've not noticed much difference in 1280 and 1080, so or 1920 by 1080 versus 1280 by 720. So I like to keep it at 1280 by 720. Frame rate's going to be at 30 frames per second. So we've got that set up here. And let's get started. So we're going to begin by creating a cylinder, and we're going to grab it and reduce it in its diameter here. I'm going to pick a number. I'm going to pick a number here, put it at 10, just for uniformity so everybody can follow along. And our height, let's stretch this guy on up a touch, and we'll see what that's going to work out to be. Let's put our height at 550. So we're at 10 by 550. Alright, now we're going to change its orientation to the Z plus, and we've got it sitting right here in the center of our scene. I think let's knock our radius down to 8 just to thin that barrel out a little bit. So everybody's with me. We're at 8 on the radius and 550 on the height. Alright. Now, first thing we're going to do is take, and while we've got that selected, get a look at it and see if it looks like it's got enough segments to be a nice clean render. And I think it's going to look good just like it is. If we render that real quick, it's nice and smooth. There's no faces showing or any weird anomalies. So while we've got it selected, hit C on your keyboard, and that's going to make the cylinder editable. Okay, so while it's editable, what we're going to do is we're going to go up here under MoGraph and choose Cloner. Okay, we're going to select that cylinder. We're going to drag it into the cloner where we have a down arrow. And you'll see that cloner by default has stacked these duplicates on top of one another. So select your cloner, move down here under the Object tab, under Mode, choose Radial. You'll see now we've got 5 cylinders in this cloner object. I'm going to bump mine up to 8. That's just the style I like on a minigun. It seems to look cooler. You could try 6 if you wanted. And we can knock this radius back so that they're closer, but it just doesn't look as beefy. I'm going to put mine back up to 8 so you guys can do whatever you'd like there. Now, you see we've got our barrels. They're pretty much touching, so we're going to need to increase that radius up so you can drag it up and out. What we want them to do is have about a distance where it would appear that you could put your finger between them. So that looks just about right. I'm going to have mine set at a count of 8 and a radius of 30. So you can see what we've got there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take this cloner object and we're going to duplicate it by clicking it, just making sure it's selected, and control click dragging down. We're just going to name the second one Trash, because we're going to delete it, but we need it to use it as a tool to make some holes in an object here in just a little bit. Alright, so next we're going to create another cylinder, and I'm going to minimize. We're going to be creating this part right here, this little cap, and what this serves as is it's a rotational, it's like a bearing in a way. It's got an inner and an outer bearing that these barrels rotate within that are connected to an inner rod. This is a miniature version of this, and they're both connected to, you can see it here, it's red. We're going to create that in a minute, but it's an inner support rod that these bearings connect to. So we're going to create this right now. So we've created our cylinder, and it by default has segments of 36. Let's bump this up to 50. And that looks pretty good. We're going to rotate it around on its Z plus axis. And we're going to scale it by grabbing the center control point and scaling it down a touch. Something about like that. You can go beefier, you can go a little fatter, a little narrower. I'm going to go down a little bit maybe, something about like that. And I'm going to move that to the front. Now you can do this a couple of different ways. I'm going to minimize again. You can see here how I've got the barrel sticking out a little bit. That adds kind of a little bit of excitement to it. For example, if you had applied some muzzle flashes, you'd be able to see them completely coming out of the barrels. You could do it another way where those barrels, once we cut some holes here, those barrels would be inside this bearing area just a touch, maybe an inch or so in real life. But we're going to leave them sticking out just a little bit, something about like that. Maybe an 1.5 inches or 2 inches in real world measurements. And we're going to get a look at it from the front. We want to make sure that we're outside. See how I'm scaling this down? We want to be outside of this edge of these barrels by a little bit. Let me zoom in where you can see. We want to be out maybe 3/4 of an inch in real world measurements, about this distance you see here. And what we're going to do at this point is we're going to take this, while we've got it selected, the cylinder, hit C on your keyboard. We're going to make it editable. We're going to take our face selection tool over here, and then we're going to go up to live selection. Select your cylinder, and you're going to click and drag within the face of the cylinder so that it's selected. You see how they're selected when they're orange. We're going to rotate around. We're going to take and hide both of these cloners for now so we don't have them in our way. And we're going to press Shift and click here and drag so that we've got this back face selected. So if we zoom out, you'll see we've got the back and the front selected. Now, while they're both selected, right click on your canvas here and choose Extrude Inner. Okay, now click anywhere in a blank area and click and drag towards your left just a touch, about a 1/4 inch or 1/8 of an inch in real world measurements, and then let go, and you'll see that we've created another set of faces here. While everything's still selected, right click and choose Extrude. Okay, we're going to click and drag to the left again, and we're going to go in and we're going to watch our surfaces intersect each other. See how they turn blue? Now I'm going to back up just a little bit and let go. If I put this on X-ray mode, you'll see that what was created is an inner segment just like that. So we've got an appearance of some depth. At this point you can take your selection tool, click off of it, and you should be pretty good at this point. Alright, so let's take and do something else. We're going to select, let me turn X-ray mode off here. We're going to click and drag again inside here, and on our keyboard, while they're selected, hit delete. Okay, we've deleted all those faces. Now let's right click and choose Close Polygon Hole, and if you mouse over an area in here, you'll see where the points, let me zoom in so you can see better. If you mouse over it, you'll see how these points highlight from that polygon surface that we deleted. When you see that they're all highlighted and your screen's turned white like this, click. And it should have closed those polygon holes. And see, now we've got one nice clean face. So we're going to rotate around again. We're going to select our Allow Selection tool, click off of our work area, and then here's a thing where you want to be careful. We're going to select just the faces, and we don't want to accidentally get something on the side. So click and drag around, try to stay close to the center, and you'll get them just right. Once you've got them selected, go ahead again and hit delete on your keyboard. Now right click once again, choose Close Polygon Hole, and as we did before, move in here. We'll get in close where you can see. We want to move in here. See how we've got our points in our face? Once you see that it's white and you can see all your orange points are visible, click it and it will close that hole off. So now we've got a nice smooth interface on both sides. And if we go back to X-ray mode, you can see that we've just reduced the polygon count considerably. Yet if I render this, you'll see that we've got a nice surface on that face. So select your Allow Selection tool, click off of your object. Let's go back into model mode, or object mode, I'm sorry, and see what we've got. Okay, so let's turn back our cloner. We'll turn this cloner back on, the trash cloner. And what we're going to do is we're going to take and create a bool. Oops. Create a bool. And we're going to take that cylinder and drag it into the bool so that we have a down arrow. Let it go. This trash object, while it's selected, on your keyboard press C. We're going to make that editable. We'll expand out trash. Click and drag around all these cylinder objects. Alright. And right click them while they're selected and choose Connect Objects and Delete. Okay, so now we've got one cylinder, which are all 8 of these that we've created earlier. We can drag it out of that trash object, so click it and drag it just above it. You don't want it in the cloner. You want it just above the trash object where you've got that sideways arrow. And let it go. Now we select that trash object and hit delete on our keyboard and remove that. So we've got our, let's rename this cylinder 1 trash again, just for clarity. And then we've got our cylinder in the bool. We're going to take that trash object, drag it in the bool just beneath the cylinder, and select your bool. And what you'll see we've done is we've made some nice holes in that object with the barrels that we've had. So I'm going to select that bool, and we'll come down beneath. I'm going to choose Create a Single Object, and hide new edges. So select your bool, come down under the Object tab, click Create Single Object, and then put a check beside Hide New Edges. So what we've done is we've created a nice hole in this object right here. At this point, select your bool, press C on your keyboard, and now we've made that editable. We're going to go right back in with our cylinder. We're going to drag it up above our bool so that it's out of the bool and let it go. Now we can select our bool and hit delete on your keyboard. So we're left with our original cloner object and this bearing that we've created. Okay, so now we can turn back on our cloner, and you see now that if we turn that on and off, we've created a nice area for these gun barrels to pass through. And this isn't absolutely necessary, but it is helpful because we're going to make these barrels hollow, and if you look down them, you want to be able to see down them, and you wouldn't want to see this bearing area like a dead end once you look down that barrel. It'd look something like, you know, like you're looking down 4 inches of tube and then there's just it's filled up. So we've got our cloner back. Now what we're going to do with our cloner is we're going to expand it out, and let's rename our top piece End Bearing. Okay. And let's take our cylinder that's our cloner object. We'll scroll back in. Now that's not going to show when you render. It's just because it's independent of the cloner. It's what these elements of the cloner are made from. So while we've got that selected, we're going to take and select its face. Remember how we did before? We're going to click and drag. And back out, just make sure you don't have any sides selected and get a look around. There's no sides accidentally selected. So now we've got this guy selected. What we're going to do is we're going to right click on that blank area of your canvas, choose Extrude Enter, and we're going to click and drag to the left just a little bit. What we're doing is forming the wall of the gun barrel. So you don't want to go too thick. You know, that would be a cannon. Here would be too thin and be too delicate. So we're going to go in about something like that. Once you've done that, keep it selected, right click and choose Extrude. Okay, now let's zoom out. Our extrude is still active here, but let's zoom out. While we've got it selected and we've got our extrude activated, we're going to click and drag left, and we're going to send this extrude on down to within a few inches of the end. So click and drag, and you see how I'm moving it down to the end. We don't want to go exactly to the end, but we want to get close, something about like that, and then let go. So I'm just a few inches from the end there. Alright, and then if we come back around here and get a look at that barrel, you can see that if I select my cloner, we've made a bunch of nice hollow gun barrels. Now, you see my mouse, it still has the extrude active, so I'm going to deactivate that by selecting my rectangle selection or allow selection tool and clicking off of my object here, just to make sure. But see, now you can see through there all the way down to the end. Of course, if you wouldn't be able to see that end, once we apply lights to our scene, that's going to be all in the complete darkness. But if we hadn't cut our holes in this area, you'd see a dead end right here where that bearing intersected those barrels. Alright, so we've got our end bearing. What we're going to do is we're going to click and drag down and duplicate that. We're going to call this middle bearing. So rename it. And we've got a copy of that now. So you should have an end and a middle bearing. Grab your move tool while your middle bearing is selected. Go into object mode. And we're going to move that down to approximately the middle. So we can go into our top view and see what would be the middle. Something about right here on that center line of our scene. Alright, I'm going to take my, go down here to my perspective view, and I'm going to thin this guy out a little bit on its Z-axis by scaling it. So select your scale tool. You kind of want to have a visual in reference to this. If you look on my desktop here, it's nice and thin. This one's big and beefy. So we're going to scale that down to something about like that. You don't want to get too thin, too girly, you know, or else you're going to have a problem, and it's just going to look too dainty. So we're looking good there, and I think we're looking good at this point. Got a few more minutes for this part 1, so I'm going to deselect that, go back into object mode, and let's see what else where we need to go from here. I think it'd be good to begin on this main body since we've got our barrels, but before we do that, let's add a little detail to these bearings. So I'm going to zoom in on this end bearing. I'm going to select that, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and get myself grab my face selection tool, and up top I'm going to go Tools. Actually, I'm going to do something in the nature of a let's do this. Go up to top to Select, Loop Selection. We're going to select this whole outer face, and we've got that selected now. And we're not going to try and duplicate the one we've got on our desktop 100%. We're going to kind of freestyle a little bit as we go. But once we've got this selected, right click and choose Extrude Enter, and we're going to come in just a touch, just a little bit, maybe a little bit more, and then we're going to right click and choose Extrude. Now you got to be careful here because this surface isn't very thick, but we do want to add a little detail to it. So I'm going to click and drag left just a little bit, something about like that, so you can see we've got a little bit of detail going on there. See, a little bit of a ridge on both sides. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to deselect everything, and now I'm going to select the faces one more time, just this inner area. Select Loop Selection, just that inner area, and while they're selected, I'm going to right click and choose Knife. Okay, it's in mode, line mode now. We need to go over here under Mode, under Options Mode, and we're going to tell it Loop. And with that, it's going to give us a nice option to create some loop cuts here. So I'm going to come in about what would be about a 1/2 inch in the real world, right there. I'm going to come on the same way, about right here. Then I'm going to come in, I need to zoom in on that. I'll zoom in, and we'll get just a little bit of offset, about a 1/4 of an inch in the real world. So right there, and then the same thing on this side. Something about right there. Okay, so you see what we've got. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to deselect everything, select my live selection tool, click on the blank canvas, then go into Select Loop Selection. I'm going to select just this inner piece. It can be tricky, so you need to maybe adjust your view and get over a point, and I'm going to click right there. I'm going to move over here, I'm going to hold Shift, and I'm going to try to target this area here, this other narrow band. While you've got Shift held down, click here. And so now we'll have both of these selected. And then what I'm going to do again is I'm going to right click on my work area, choose Extrude, and this time I'm going to drag to my right just a touch and extrude that out. So what I've got is another little ridge of detail. Alright. So we're at about 20 minutes now, and I'm going to let this be all of part 1, and I'll put up part 2 here shortly. Make sure to save your project at this point. You don't want to lose your work to a power outage or a failing hard drive or just stupidity. So watch out for part 2. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.